if you have the wherewithal and the financial backing to go to college and experience those 4 years to do a little bit of growing up and to learn, I'm a big advocate of it, okay? But not everybody's cut out for that.
The tables have turned. Welcome to the Six, ladies and gentlemen. It's a little different intro because I'm going to be the man in the moderator seat today. My name is Deshaun Drummond. Today, I get to sit in the host seat. I have the pleasure, the privilege, the honor to be interviewing a guy who, man, what can I say about
nice
Sandy
things.
Cerami?
Say nice things.
All right. It's easy. Sandy Cerami, for those of you who don't know him, is probably one of the most influential, inspirational people you'll ever meet. Came into my life about 5 years ago almost, has been a difference maker in what I've been able to produce, giving me clarity, just getting people on track. And I am so blessed to get the opportunity to help you get to know him today. So I don't just sit down with somebody who's a business leader, who is, my God, the track record long, has run dealerships, owned dealerships, been a business consultant to some of the most successful dealerships in the country, a man in the spoke of the wheel behind a lot of the most successful dealerships that you probably know, or even if you don't know. And just an all-around good person, family guy. I'm blessed to be able to call him a friend.
Yes, sir.
My man, Sandy Cerami.
You give me a lot to live up to now.
Yes.
I mean, come on now.
You do it, man.
Even I want to get to know me today, to be honest with you.
That's the point, man. I'm excited.
I am too, man. I am too.
I'm excited.
Yeah, we're turning the tables today a little bit, right?
Yes, definitely. And
now let me ask you this question real quickly. I mean, it's different, right? I was a little anxious coming here on my way today. I said, God, I got little butterflies in my stomach because I'm the guy in the hot seat today, but you get a chance to spin the tables over here and ask the questions. So I'm excited, man.
Yeah, I'm definitely, it's a different format. I got a couple butterflies too, but they'll go away because you know how we do, man. We just talk.
That's it. We're having a conversation.
No different than what we always do. And, we get to delve deep into you, your brain, what kind of sparked the whole idea for the Six, where you come from, kind of what's made you who you are today.
Sure.
And I'm excited about that. So everyone who's watching, we appreciate everything that's happened. What kind of sparked this whole thing is, the whole premise of the Six, your idea was, you wanted to tell stories.
Yeah.
You
real stories, right? Genuine stories.
Very real, genuine stories from people who are relatable. And I think you've done a great job laying that foundation of just, bringing on people whose stories inspire people. But a lot of people are ready, and I think, and have been asking, for Sandy's story.
Yeah, well, I have one. I'm going to stick to it. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So listen, we'll be candid. This is not. We never dress stuff up. I'm curious, and I want to lay the foundation to basically let people know where you started, where you're at, and what you see coming for your brand and what you want to contribute to the world. So, let's just kick it right off.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when you and I had this conversation over the weekend and we talked about turning the tables, and we're getting a lot of great feedback from folks that are listening and watching and sharing. But by the way, make sure you subscribe and share.
Yes.
Rate and review. It makes all the difference in the world. But a lot of the feedback that we've gotten early on was like, we want to know the story behind the story. Like, who was Deshaun? Who was Sandy? Who was Hollywood Capone, the man that makes the magic happen back there? I know he said he'd never go in front of the camera. We're going to work on that, though. But look, I'm a pretty easy read. I want to be as transparent as I possibly can in my life. I'm a kid that grew up in Bergen County, New Jersey. Nothing really terrible about the suburban streets of northern New Jersey, man. I mean, it was a very, very normal childhood for the most part. My parents were meant to be apart and not together. They got divorced when I was about 5 years old. I have a younger sister, Susie, who was about 4 at the time. We were real close to Irish twins. We're only 13 months apart, and so or excuse me, 15 months apart.
So because I want to, when you say your parents, we talked a little bit about this.
Yeah.
You and Eric, me and yourself.
Sure.
You know, we talked about our parents not being together.
Yeah.
But you were 5 at the point?
Yeah, just about 5, 6 years old.
I mean, how does that affect you at 5?
Oh.
You know, what does that look like at 5, knowing your parents are?
It's a great question, Double D. I mean, I don't know that any 5 or 6 year old kid can really process that. I mean, the one thing I did know is that when my mom broke the news that my dad wasn't coming home. Now, we were used to my dad not being around a lot because he was in the car business. He was working 12, 14 hours a day. But when he hadn't been home for a long period of time, I remember my mom saying to me, Dad's not going to come home anymore. And I didn't have a real understanding. I just knew that my dad wasn't coming home to live at the house any longer. And I took that pretty hard initially. I remember the day almost like it was yesterday when she told me. I remember running into my room and literally doing the launch onto the bed and crying and
trying to process.
Yeah, just trying to figure out what the heck she meant by that. And over the course of the next couple of years, it was difficult. I mean, I have a lot of compassion and empathy for my mom and my dad. My mom was young. My mom was really young when she had us. 21 years old when she had me.
I was going to say how old.
Yeah, and I just couldn't even imagine what life would have been like for me if I had kids at that age. But she did an incredible job over the years, I will tell you. In spite of the fact that I was a difficult kid, I was a kid that suffered from ADD. I remember going in and out of the city, being put on Ritalin and other medications to try and keep me calm. I probably could use a dose of that today, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, you're still active. I think you've channeled that energy into.
I think we all learn how to do that for the most part.
You grow up and we kind of have a bunch of energy as kids,
Absolutely.
but we don't have a place to channel it. So
I think the energy combined with, I think, some of the frustration that I experienced because I didn't understand what was going on was part of the challenge. And for my mom, who was a single mom, a pretty bitter divorce early on. I will say that 30 years later, we did get everybody back together, and my parents became fast friends and their spouses as well for the next 20 years. I was a blessing in my life that they had gotten past all of the challenges, but it was a tough time. I can remember police cars at the house. I can remember a lot of fights.
Did you become negative at any point because of it? Because everyone processes things differently. So I'm like, when you say that you were on Ritalin and that you were hyperactive, did that have anything to do, you think, with the splitting, or was it?
I think that was
your
even
nature
early.
On top of.
I think it was a combination of both. It's a great question. I think it was a combination of both. I think that I was a difficult kid growing up. I was a kid that found trouble a whole lot. I was a latchkey kid, which, my mom was working, and so I can remember my sister and I literally getting home from school on the school bus, 2nd, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and, we'd get into the house, we fended for ourselves until 6:30, 7 o'clock at night when my mom got home from work. But, we had fun. I mean, I was a kid playing every sport under the sun, had a lot of friends. I tended to get in trouble in school. I did very well up until about the 4th or 5th grade when I started to understand what the divorce.
I got my first D. And
man. Oh, you're not kidding. And now we got the double D, so it's okay, man. I'm okay with that.
It's nature since the start.
No question.
About 4th, 5th grade, you start now.
I'm starting to act out.
You're 19 years old.
Yeah, well, 9, 10, struggling with the divorce. The terrible relationship between my parents at the time, and I get it.
Hyperactive at this
hyperactive, and so what happens is in 5th grade, my mom decides we're going to move, and we moved to my grandparents' house for a couple of months in the interim. It was a wonderful summer that I spent with my grandparents. And then it was time for reality to smack me right in the face, and we moved to a new town in 6th grade. As you know, I have a name that can be often associated with the female gender. Kind of tough growing up with that name. I was named after both of my grandfathers, Santo and Andrew, so they combined it and made Sandy. Really, I held a
great
grudge.
name.
It is.
You're right.
I
It's a great
appreciate
name,
it today, but when you're in 6th grade
Yeah.
and you go to a new school and your name is Sandy, and every kid in the class wants to see what you're made of and
Right,
test your
right.
mettle. I started that year off with a couple of fist fights in the first 10 days to 2 weeks. I remember my mom having to come in, a couple that I won and a couple that I didn't win.
Yeah, sure.
As a matter of fact,
What town is this?
this is Park Ridge, New Jersey. Great town. As a matter of fact, it's James Gandolfini, Park Ridge guy. But I actually connected with a guy on Facebook who was one of the first guys to actually show me a little bit of respect in 6th grade and became a friend. And I was so thankful for that. I got to be honest with you, because I felt really awkward going in as the new kid. Like I had never had that experience before. And I remember how much I didn't enjoy that. That was a tough year, 6th grade, to be honest with you. But we made the adjustment.
Newtown, 6th grade.
Newtown,
new
6th
school.
grade.
Right.
7th grade, Newtown again, new school. 8th grade, Newtown again, new school. 9th grade, new school. Same town. I had moved in with my dad by that
well,
point.
That's, all right, let's pause and then we'll go back. Where was Dad over the course of
Great question.
8
Great
years
question.
old to the time you go to
Yep.
7th, 8th
Yeah.
grade?
My
'Cause I
dad-
didn't hear you mention him much over that. I heard Mom. Where was Dad at?
Yeah, Dad was
Seeing him?
Dad was there. Dad was there. There were visitation rights set up, so Dad wasn't there every day. He was there as much as he could be there. He was in the car business.
How many times would you say you saw him on a monthly basis?
We would see him anywhere from 4 to 6 times a month.
Okay.
We'd go for a visit on a Wednesday night. His days were Wednesdays and Sundays.
Okay.
Every other Wednesday and Sundays, if I remember correctly. And then some Sundays didn't work out, for whatever reason.
Right, exactly.
And
It's
I
not
remember
like on schedule every week. He did
Yeah.
some weeks. Oh, I'm busy. I got something to do.
exactly, or some Wednesdays when we had to work. It was Wednesday. I remember it was Wednesday because Wednesdays they would close the dealership at 6 o'clock in those days, and so my dad would close the store and then come pick us up for dinner, and it would be an hour and a half, and we'd go and have dinner, and it was it was what it was.
Right.
But my dad was always there. He was always in the picture, always very supportive of me and my sister. I never lacked for a pat on the back.
Definitely.
I decided that I wanted to live with him when I was 11 years old, and I got on my bike one day, and that was it. I made the decision. I moved in with
Mom
him.
was good with that.
Mom wasn't that good with it at the point in time, and I didn't handle it the right way, to be honest with you.
You kind of said, "This is what I'm doing." This,
Did I mention I was a rough kid?
right.
I was a rough kid to
So
deal
this
with.
was a decision you made. Got it.
This was a decision I made. I look back today with a lot of empathy and compassion for how my mom dealt with it. She was fantastic. My mom called me every day. I'm gonna get a little emotional right now because I think about my relationship with my mom today. Like it's so amazing and so strong today. And she dealt with a lot as a mom. I can't imagine if one of my kids had done what I did with my mom, how I would have responded. So I love you, Mom, and I thank you for that because it taught me a lesson, much later on in life.
Absolutely.
But,
It's special. I was raised by my mother for pretty much until I turned 13, 14. I would see my father and, so I know what it's like to be an adult now and look
at that age, right? At that
Yeah.
age, you crave that relationship with your dad. And,
For sure.
And unfortunately, it turned into an indictment of my mom unfairly on my part.
Sure, absolutely.
But we rectified that. My
You're looking for
dad.
somebody to blame. Sometimes you probably blamed yourself.
Oh
Like,
my
what-
gosh, man! There was plenty of those days. I remember my dad saying to me every single day, your mom called. At some point, you need to talk to your mom, and that went on for about a year and a half, if I remember correctly. And my mom called every day religiously. Give her credit for that. That's a hard thing to do for a mom. And truthfully, finally Christmas one year, I went over to the house. Christmas Day, and part of it stemmed from the fact that my mom had remarried,
Yeah.
and I didn't get along with the gentleman that she had remarried, which happens. It's part of life. But it taught me a valuable lesson about having to grow up.
As you're saying that, you know what I'm thinking about, because I hear a lot of people now. Gary Vee, who we both are huge fans of, talks a lot about emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you have to deal with emotions as a young person, you have to develop those emotional skills.
Absolutely.
The way you manage them, because sometimes you don't have to deal with real emotions until your first heartbreak.
No question.
Your first relationship. But at 5, 8, 10, you're dealing with all these different emotions. So by the time you turn 8, you're in 8th grade rather. You go to live with your dad. Now you gotta Your mom is, you
Yeah.
have a different dynamic. So let's come out of that for a minute. How do you think that has helped your emotional intelligence
Oh
and the
my
way
God.
you deal with people today? Because I think
It was a
anyone who knows
blessing.
You know, you deal very. When you're dealing with people, you deal from a place of, being highly
Honest.
sensitive, honest to the person, feeling empathetic.
Yeah, sure.
So, do you think that has turned into a blessing for you?
It's a wonderful question, and the answer is absolutely. It was the blessing in disguise. I spoke to a guy, and I'm not going to. I don't drop names. I was speaking to an NFL player a couple of weeks back with Mr. McCarthy, who was on last week's episode. We were talking about the fact that he had gone to different schools, 4 different high schools in his high school career. And he was talking about it from a little bit of a negative perspective, but I said to him, hey, man, that was a gift. Like, you should thank your parents for that. I think about every day what I went through as a kid growing up, different schools, different relationships, different people in and out of my life. And it taught me, as you said, the emotional intelligence that I needed to navigate human relationships, right? There's a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Just referenced it in my tips of the week. Tremendous.
Classic.
And I lived that book, like learned early on how to deal with people, meet people. Because here's what it was, Double D. Every time I went to a different school with my name, it was either you learn how to fight or you learn how to make friends. And I learned in 6th grade, like, it was easier to make friends, bro.
Right.
I mean, how many people are you going to fight, for God's sake? So, you got to eat lightning and crap thunder. I mean, I needed Mickey in my corner. He wasn't there,
Just fight every year, every day. Yeah, it gets old after a while.
No
Start
question.
looking for a different way to.
Yeah.
So making.
I'm gonna tell you a real funny story. Is one of my first friends in Park Ridge was a guy that we both know in the car business. He's over
Steve
Colwell, over
Mm-hmm.
Colwell Mercedes. Steve Reedy.
Really?
What's up, Steve? Checking
Steve
you out.
Reedy. Shout out to Steve
Yeah,
Reedy.
no, good guy, and one of my first friends over there. But I'll tell you, as you talk about 8th grade, like that was a seminal point in my life when I moved in with my dad. My dad made the decision for me that I was going to go to Bergen Catholic High School, and
Great school.
another new school, great school.
Yeah.
I had learned how to meet people and make friends a lot better at that point in my life, but I hadn't mastered the student piece of it yet. Double D.
Right.
Was still kind of goofing off in school and not taking it seriously. I was stuck in that. I'd rather be cool than be smart.
Right. And what do you think caused you to not do well in school? Was it you had a hard time with the material? Was it you weren't interested? What?
I knew at a pretty early age that I wanted to follow in my grandfather and my dad's footsteps into the car business, because I would go to work with him on Saturdays every once in a while. I fell in love with the car business. Not so much the cars, and that's the funny thing. People say to me all the time, was it the cars? And it's not. I couldn't tell you the engine or the year of it. What I loved was the people end of it, the action, the activity in the dealership, in the showroom. And so I knew at a pretty early age what I wanted to do. And so I kept saying,
see school as the necessary way to get. And
that's a trick question. Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing because people say, "Are you against school?" People ask, "Are you think people should go to college?" And people should go to college. I think, and I've heard other people say, if it's necessary for you to get where you want to go.
Absolutely.
If you need a degree in this to get where you want to go, then you should go. But you said, look, I want to go into the car business. I can do that right out of high school. You felt like...
Oh, I thought I could. I mean, my dad had different plans.
Okay.
My dad wanted me to be the first one to graduate in the family from college. That plan took a turn, I can promise you that. As I mentioned, I was on the Blutarski Scholarship Program sponsored by Anheuser-Busch when I went to the University of Rhode Island. It didn't work out that well, I promise you. But and I didn't have a wildly successful academic career at Bergen Catholic either. I negotiated my way out of the school. I promised them I'd never come back again if they just passed me and get me out.
Right. You don't pass me, I'm coming back.
I'm coming back, and I'm not leaving then. The old Bronx tale. Now you can't leave. Would lock them in. But I just didn't see school as something that I had a huge interest in. Like I was a decent student. It wasn't that I didn't have the acumen. I was a goofball. I was too busy having fun, trying to be cool. And I missed the opportunity that I really had at Bergen Catholic to take advantage of it. Now, to your point, when you say, everybody should be going to college, and I don't necessarily believe that. I think there are people out there that have an aptitude for something that doesn't involve college, and I think that people can chase dreams that way. I've heard way too many success stories that don't involve college.
Right.
But that said, if you have the wherewithal and the financial backing to go to college and experience those 4 years to do a little bit of growing up and to learn, I'm a big advocate of it, okay? But not everybody's cut out for that. And so I think you have to kind of figure out for yourself what makes sense. I have 2 kids. My son is a junior in high school at Bergen Catholic, got past the negative legacy that he had to deal with.
He
but
had a lot to
overcome, I promise you. I know they were like kind of tapping their chin going, do we really need another one of these guys running through the halls? But he has 180 different, 180 degrees different.
He's definitely
amen.
Turned around the Cerami name.
He has brought some credibility to it, thank God. But I say to him all the time, like, I want him to go to college because I want him to have that experience.
Right.
Whether or not he uses what he learns in college in his life or not doesn't really matter to me. I want him to experience college and make his own way. And my daughter as well. My daughter Anna's 14. She's a freshman. They've got big decisions to make coming up, and my wife and I, allow them to make those decisions with our input. But
did you play any sports in school? Were you into sports, or were you just?
I was. It's funny because my dad was not an athlete, and I was what I would consider an exceptional baseball player all the way up until freshman year at Bergen Catholic. And when I found out, I made the baseball team freshman year. When I found out that the season ran into my beach time, which is something that I loved, I loved surfing. I was a surfer at the time. I loved to surf.
You're on the cusp of having fun and
there's 2 things that happened.
Living.
When I had to come back up early to try out for the football team at Bergen Catholic, I felt that. And I thought about that at the end of the year when I went out for the baseball team. And I ended up not taking my spot on the team because I wanted to go down to the beach and surf at that point. I had a whole group of friends down there that I enjoyed spending time with. And Patrick, don't get any ideas, buddy. You're a far better baseball player than me, as much as you love to go down and bodyboard down there.
The next generation should be greater.
Yeah, of course, no question.
As great as you are.
But I always stay close to it. I mean, I ended up wrestling my junior and senior year because I needed to do something to stay in shape in the wintertime. Didn't know what the hell I was doing, but that's never stopped me before. As you can see, I've repeated that pattern here on the 6. Not knowing how to do something has never stopped me. I think I learned that pretty early on in life, like just to try it and go for it.
And you know what I see is the makeup of who you are, from the being alone as a child, being a latchkey kid, developing the emotional intelligence, having fun with people. I think that that's been the common theme is once you got out of the fighting, you begin to really spend more time with people. It's not like you said I was a loner. I was not that if you would like to be alone, but when I see you today, I see a person who is very much loved by people, very interactive, and so it's no surprise to me when I'm hearing you say that, throughout elementary, middle school and high school,
no doubt.
You were focused on hanging with people.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, like, going back to the point we made about 6th grade, like, having fun and making friends was, for me, more enjoyable than getting your ass kicked, to be honest with you. I mean, or kicking somebody else's ass. I mean, it didn't matter. Like, that became something I didn't have a lot of interest in. I did enjoy making people laugh. I found that, quite honestly, as a way to disarm folks
Look at the people, not to cut you off, but that's a great point.
Right.
Because there are people who fight throughout their childhood and then become confrontational in adulthood.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you might not be fighting, but we know people who everything's a confrontation. We know they always have to be right. They haven't learned the skill of, I rather have great relationships than be right all the time. I have to prove my point, especially in business.
Yeah, and again, I go back to that being a byproduct of how I grew up. I think it's a lot of the influence of my family. I've got a wonderful family, not just my mom and dad, my sister Susie, who's awesome, has like the most amazing witty sense of humor you've ever heard in your life. Makes me look like a boring adult. She's hysterically funny. Yeah, no question. But even my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents, my cousins, always people that were gregarious, love to have a good time, and if you wanted to be in that environment and survive, you better figure out how to make people laugh and have fun. And so I enjoyed that. Yeah, it did. It did. In spite of all the challenges, those were the great days that I remember in my childhood.
Absolutely. All right, so as we round out the first segment, I mean, talk about leaving college. How was your transition after, like, in college and after? Like, what did that look like?
I'll tell you real quickly. I went to college with my dad and his wife Judy and my sister Susie. My dad had a boat at the time. We took my dad's boat to drop me off at college. A little non-traditional. I wasn't too happy about that. When they picked me up to take me over to the campus, I had a little right-hand drive English guy drive me over. I mean, I was mortified. I couldn't wait to get out of the car and run up to my room. But I'll never forget my dad saying to me, it was a tough time because, in this respect, my dad and I had such a genuine, close father-son relationship. We had really grown up together over the 6 or 7 years that preceded me going to college. It was a big adjustment for him. Now, I was ready to go because I was 18, and you're 18, you're ready to have some fun, and I was looking forward to that aspect of it. I went to college with my best friend from Bergen Catholic, John Myers. Shout out to John. Get off the couch, bro. Get into the game. Come join us at the next table. Love to have you over here.
Love to have you.
No doubt. But when I got to college, wasn't keyed in on the academics, my man. I found the first party I could find.
So
and
you
went
never
to,
got the academics together?
No, sir. No,
Right.
no.
From fourth grade to like...
No, I'll never forget the first semester. I had a 2.23 GPA. I don't know how the hell I did it because I don't even remember going to college or going to college classes, for that matter, or doing any damn homework. It was literally just by the seat of my pants that I was able to get a 2.23, and it was probably the worst thing that could have happened to me because what it set me up for was the next semester where I really thought I had this thing wired. And when I opened up the letter from the school at the end of the year in June, and I got the note that said, "Mr. Cerami, don't ever come back to the University of Rhode Island again, please," with a .68, I realized, like,
0.68?
yeah. I realized that I had really done a number on myself. Now, the funny part about it is John Myers, who I referenced before, got his letter a day earlier, and he had a .82, and I remember laughing hysterically on the phone saying, how the hell did you get a .82, only to open up my letter the next day, and I was lower.
My
and,
God.
by the way, his parents, his father told him to leave the house. He spent the next week at my house. My dad said, "John, you tell John, come stay at the house. He can stay here as long as he needs to." Until we opened up my letter, he said, "Get John the hell out of here, and you go with him too.
Right, exactly.
The two of you get the hell out of here." But
so
I knew at that point it was time to go to work.
Right.
School's not an option.
It's like
You know where I'm coming from.
it's like I heard somebody say, I used to wrestle in school, and one day I looked over, I saw a 200-pound kid, and basketball was my game.
That's
after
it,
that.
bro. That's it. Absolutely.
So after you did the school, after you got the .68,
Yeah.
you realize it's
You rubbing
time
it
to
in
go to
now?
work.
You rubbing it in? Yeah.
Maybe I should work now.
Well, here's the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is I did go to work right away, and my dad put me to work in the shop, which was a blessing, and we'll talk a little bit about that, in the next segment. But I went into the shop and I put on the dark blue pants and the white T-shirt and rolled up my sleeves, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a second.
What I'd like to talk about when we come back, I mean, see, this is the making of the man.
Yep.
And I love it because, when we do these segments, and we got about a minute and a half. So, but when we do these segments, we always do them in twos. And that first segment is the making of the person.
Yep.
So that when we start talking about what you're doing now and kind of what shape professionally you can see, because that's the important part. Is you're a person who, at 5 years old, parents divorced, coming home alone, being the big brother to your little sister, having some social challenges in the beginning, fighting your way through early middle school, flunking out of school is almost, definitely flunking out of college.
No.
And then when we start talking about what you've been able to do with that background, I mean, that's the whole point of the six. So I'm excited to talk with you about that when we come back. So we'll
out.
see you in the second segment.